Hello and welcome to the webinar where we will talk about the role of astrology in relationship management. My name is Aman of AstroSatva. I provide astrological consultancy as well as I teach astrology to interested students. In my another webinar, I talked about myths and reality of Vedic astrology. Throughout our life, in various life areas. And how it actually does it is basically by the identification of our challenges as well as strengths depicted coming out from our horoscope. And we know that our emotions, they affect us. And that's what I actually talked about in the another webinar, that the outer planets, they impact us or not, whereas if we consider them to be inside us, like we term our emotions as the planets, we call them the planets, they definitely will impact us. And the emotions of the human nature, human emotions. And when we talk about relationships, we have multiple relationships in our life. Like we have the first relation with our family, with our parents. So the mother-son relation, father-son relation, Hello and welcome to the webinar where we will talk about the role of astrology in relationship management. My name is Aman and I am the founder of AstroSatva. I provide astrological consultancy as well as I teach astrology to interested students. In my another webinar, I talked about myths and reality of Vedic astrology. Today we'll talk about the role of astrology in relationship management. Actually, astrology can guide us throughout our life in various life areas. And how it actually does it is basically by the identification of our challenges as well as strengths depicted coming out from our horoscope. And we know that our emotions, they affect us. And that's what I actually talked about in the another webinar, that the outer planets, they impact us or not, whereas if we consider them to be inside us, like we term our emotions as the planets, we call them the planets, they definitely will impact us. And the emotions, they play a major role in our relationships. The entire concept of relationship, it revolves around the human nature, human emotions. And when we talk about relationships, we have multiple relationships in our life. Like we have the first relation with our family, with our parents. So the mother-son relation, father-son relation, brother-sister relation, our relation with our cousins, our relatives, our friends, our colleagues, our business partners. We all are related to each other one way or the other. And one person has multiple relations that way, that he has to honor, he has to live, he has to play a major role with that relation in his life. So love relations, husband-wife relations, relations of father and son, relations with siblings, relations at workplace, relations with business partners. There could be any relation with our neighbors for that matter. So the emotions of the person, they can make or break any relation. Now astrology, how can astrology help us in managing the relations in our life? The challenging areas and the strengths, if one can focus on them, then in that case, if the challenges are known, person can work on them to solve or to strengthen those areas that are weak in the life. And astrological significations of the planets, if we talk about the challenges in the horoscope, if we can identify them, definitely we can work on the challenging areas, on the weak areas of our lives. The problem in the life actually comes because of the weakness of the favorable planets or because of the malefic influences from the unfavorable planets coming into the horoscope. The entire theory behind this, how it actually happens, is explained in the courses that I teach. Whereas, just to understand the concept of relationships and the application of astrology into relationships of our lives, we just need to understand that the problems in the life, they come, the person has to go through the different problems or the different challenges because of the weak planets or the afflictions coming to the weak planets. The strong planets are the strong emotions or the strong thinking, thoughts that the person has, the strong areas of his life, and he is able to take care of all those life areas that are governed by those planets. And horoscope actually is that X-ray report, we can say, or that sort of CT scan we have of our life, where we can find out the strong and weak areas and can work on them. And to understand the relations, as I said, there are multiple relations of a person in the life. We need to look at the astrological significations. We need to look at the horoscope to understand it in a better way. So for that matter, I take a couple of examples over here. And those of you who does not have any sort of experience with astrology by now, you are most welcome to enroll into any of my almost free courses to have the understanding, and then can further start your journey towards astrological learning, because this is these courses that I teach, they are purely practical. The application of theoretical concepts in a practical way with the help of examples is what is being taught. So if we focus on these two horoscopes, I'll explain you as a if you have understanding of astrology, that's well and good, but there could be that audience who does not have any understanding of astrology. For them, I'll just talk about various significations of various houses. Like the horoscope, actually, it is the division of 360 degree zodiac into 12 different parts. And those 12 different parts are called signs as well as houses. There are 12 signs. If you divide the 360 with 30, you get 12 signs. So 30 degrees are assigned to each house, each sign. And the degree, the sign rising at this particular place, this is called the Ascendant. And the degree rising over here is called the most effective point. And each sign, each planet, each house, it has various significations that can be, if that can be understood, then we can identify that which area of life will have challenges and which area of life will have strengths, the positive significations coming in the life of the native. So as I said, that the problem in the life comes because if the planets, the favorable planets, if they are weak, or because of the trouble or the malefic influence coming from the unfavorable planets. Now in this horoscope, this is the Leo Ascendant chart. In fact, both the charts are Leo Ascendant, and the native, the first example, the native was born on 15th of September 1986. In the second case, 17th of September 1986. Just the 2 days difference, and whole lot of situation changes for both of them in the case of marital relations. In the first case, we actually look at the 7th house, the house governing marriage or the partnerships in the life, the 7th house. There are supporting houses as well that we need to look at, whereas primarily we look at the 7th house if there is a Mool Trikona sign. So this being the Leo Ascendant chart, 7th house has Aquarius. So we will focus on the 7th house, and 7th house does not have any sort of malefic influence coming in. How do we identify that? We need to look at the unfavorable planets. Those are marked in red. So Moon is not placed in the 7th house. Moon is in the 6th house. Moon does not have any impact on the 7th house or its lord, the Saturn. The 7th lord is Saturn, Shani. So 7th house is pretty strong. Saturn is well placed, is strong by degrees. Jupiter is placed close to the MEP. Jupiter is the 5th lord. The planet governing the affairs, the emotions, is well placed, is very strong. Mars is well placed. Saturn is well placed. So this native does not have any marital relationship issues. Does not have any emotional issues. Whereas this native, born 2 days later from this native, for him, the marital life will definitely be in trouble because most malefic planet Moon is placed exactly at 14 degrees, the degree of the Ascendant. The most effective point is 14 degrees, and at 14 degrees itself Moon is placed in the 7th house, causing challenges in the marital life. If we can mark this affliction, that would help. So problem is this. Because the 7th house, the house of partners, is afflicted by Moon, the most malefic planet, the planet placed over there in this house will also get its impact. So that's why the 5th lord, Jupiter, the sign Sagittarius falls in the 5th house. So the lord of 5th house is Jupiter, which is placed in the 7th house. That means it is placed in an afflicted house. So the emotional trouble will definitely be there to the native. There will be emotional setbacks to the native. Because 5th lord is placed in the 7th house, in both the cases there are possibilities of both the natives to go for the spouse of their own choice. Whereas the second native, person born on 17th of September, will have temperamental issues as well. Because Moon would afflict Ascendant also, because Moon will have its 7th aspect to the Ascendant. So the person's overall temperament will be troublesome. The Ascendant Lord Sun is of 0 degrees, placed in the 2nd house. In the first example, Sun is weak because Sun is of 28 degrees in the old age, whereas Sun is placed in its own Mool Trikona sign, gaining some strength at least. And there are several supporting planets, like Mercury is placed in its own Mool Trikona sign, Venus is placed in its own Mool Trikona sign, Saturn is well placed in an angle, Jupiter is placed close to the MEP in an angular house, Mars is also placed in a trine, and its dispositor is also strong. So there are a couple of strong areas in the horoscope of the first native, whereas in the second chart, in this case, there is an exact affliction coming from the most malefic planet. The 12th Lord Moon is afflicting 7th house as well as the Ascendant. So it's not good for the health of the native, it's not good for the temperament of the native, for the nature of the native. The person would have emotional disbalance, emotional setbacks, and marital problem. So the role of astrology in the life to identify which life area is under stress is clearly evident from these two examples. This native will not have any trouble, whereas this native will have marital problems. Now, if we move forward to other examples, these are two different examples. The first person is born on 3rd January 1972 at 2:55 p.m. and the second person is born on the same day at 5:55 p.m., just 3 hours later. 3 years later, the ascendant changes. Because of the rising degree, the closeness of other planets to the MEP changes, and that makes a whole lot of difference. Now, if we look at the first example, the rising degree is 11 degrees, and Mars as well as Rahu and Ketu, they are of 11 degrees. All the planets that are marked in red, they are unfavorable planets because their Mool Trikona sign falls in the 6th, 8th or 12th. The 6th house is ruled by, the Libra falls in the 6th house and it's ruled by Venus. So Venus is the unfavorable planet. Sagittarius falls in the 8th house, ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter is unfavorable for the native. Aries falls in the 12th house. So the Lord of Aries, Mars, is unfavorable. And Rahu or Ketu are generally unfavorable. So in this chart, so Mars actually in this example is affecting the 11th house, 2nd house by its 4th aspect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th house as well as 6th house. Because Mars will have 4th aspect, 7th aspect as well as 8th aspect coming on to these houses. Whereas Mars itself is afflicted by Ketu. Because Ketu is 11 degrees, Mars is also 11 degrees. So Mars over here in this horoscope is afflicted as well as afflicting. It is getting the affliction from Ketu and it is afflicting other houses in this horoscope. So these are the challenges. And because Rahu Ketu are also exactly at the MEP, they will destroy 6 houses where they are placed and where they are aspecting. Rahu is giving affliction to Ascendant. And Rahu is giving affliction to the 5th house. Similarly, Ketu is giving affliction to 7th house. Ketu is giving affliction to the 11th house. So these sort of negative influences are playing around in this native's life. and what impact it will have on the native in terms of relationships. Now the first house, the ascendant, the person itself has a lot of issues because the ascendant is afflicted by Rahu, so manipulative nature, because Rahu would give manipulative traits. Saturn is placed over there, Saturn is the 10th lord, so the person will have lot of ambitions with respect to his profession, because Saturn rules the 10th house, because Aquarius falls over there in the 10th house. And ascendant, the house where Saturn is placed, is under the influence of Rahu, the planet of ambitions, planet of manipulations. So the person will have manipulative nature, will not think about society norms while working or while dealing with others. The third house as well as 11th house, they are afflicted. So the person will have trouble with the siblings, the younger brother, elder brother, relations of family members, relatives, especially brother, because Mars is the general significator of brother. So trouble with brothers, trouble with siblings, trouble with elders in his life. Fifth house is afflicted, that means emotional problem with children, problem with love affairs. Seventh house is afflicted, problem with spouse. Ninth house is afflicted, problem with father. General significator of father, sun, is placed in the 8th house. Fourth lord, sun being the 4th lord placed in the 8th house. Problem with parents. Overall, in general, there are multiple relations are going to be into troublesome situation in this native's life. If we look at the second example, over here, no such MEP affliction is there, because MEP, the rising degree is 23 degrees and the number of malefics are less, this being the Gemini ascendant chart. Only Rahu and Ketu will be unfavorable planets. Now in this case, Ketu afflicts Mars, because Ketu will have its 9th aspect coming to the Mars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So Mars is exactly afflicted by Ketu. Mars is the 11th lord. So elder brother, general significator of brother and elder, being 11th lord, or other elders in the life. So relations with brother will be troublesome, and because 11th house rules income, so income definitely will take a hit. But because we are talking about relationships only, so definitely Ketu's impact on Mars indicates in this horoscope that the person will have troublesome relations with the brother. There is no affliction coming on the 7th house, just the 7th lord is placed in the 6th house in the old age. So slight difference of opinion or disputes with spouse definitely will be there, but not to the extent as of this native. Rahu has some affliction coming to Saturn, that is the 9th lord. So person will have tendency to manipulate his father for his own gains, whereas the overall relation with the father will not be that troublesome as that of the first native. And second lord and general significator of mother is moon, which is well placed, so relations with mother will be okay. Fifth lord Venus is placed in the 8th house. So losses or setbacks to emotions in love affairs is definitely will be there, whereas not to the extent as to the first person. So definitely we can see with the help of these horoscopes, with the help of these examples, that astrology can help us identify challenges as well as strengths of the horoscope. Now in the second example, if we see, moon being the general significator of mother, the person will have very strong bond with the mother. Because fourth Lord also depicts mother. So fourth Lord Mercury is placed in the 6th house in old age. That does indicate that the mother will have some sort of either the health issues or the person will have some sort of difference of opinion with mother, whereas inherently person will have love and affection with his mother and overall support in the entire life coming from mother. So astrology really helps in identifying the challenges as well as the strengths by looking at the horoscope, provided one is capable enough to identify the weak and strong areas in the chart. And that's not very difficult. You just need to understand the basic principles. You just need to understand how to apply those principles in the horoscopes, how to interpret those afflictions, how to interpret those positive influences that are there in the chart. First thing is to identify what is the influence in the chart, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. And how to do that? Anyone can learn it. Once that step is done, then the significations of the houses, the significations of the signs, the significations of the planets, that come into the picture. The planet that rules which particular house, which life area is governed by that house, whether that will be positively impacted or negatively impacted, that becomes quite easy to identify when the person understands how to apply the principles. And that is how astrology will definitely help in managing the relations. Now, in this particular case, in the first example that we have talked about, all the malefics, they are playing their major role in the native's life. That means all the negative planets, all the negative emotions, they are overpowering the person. So person has to work on that. And definitely the solutions can then be suggested because now the diagnosis is done. The challenging areas, those needs to be addressed. The person needs to be consciously work towards those challenges. And whatever is the strong area, whatever is the favorable planet, that means the favorable or the positive emotion, positive thoughts that the person has, those needs to be further strengthened. Person needs to work on both of these things. Whatever is the positive trait, that needs to further be enhanced consciously, and the negative ones needs to be worked upon so that person will have a balanced life, balanced relations in the life. So this is how astrology actually helps us in managing the relations. And if you have interest in understanding how to apply these principles, what are actually these principles, you can definitely contact me and join any of the course. So all the students who learn these principles with the help of our courses, they can very quickly identify the root cause of the problem. The root cause lies in the horoscope. Identification of that actually is an art, and that's not very difficult. It's pretty easy. The people who learn this system with dedication, they just need to understand the principles and the method of applying those principles in the real life examples, real life horoscopes. And that's what we do. That's what we teach. That's what we practice. And we teach what we practice. So if you have any doubts, any queries, any questions with respect to this webinar or this system that we follow, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. I can be contacted by email, by phone, by WhatsApp, either way, whatever way you wish. And I believe this webinar would have been useful to you. So with this, I close out here and wish you good luck. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. Bye-bye.